Well, Chris Curtis is fighting Roman Kopylov this weekend, January 11th. Of course, Saturday, UFC Fight Night. Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. And honestly, I am more excited for this Chris Curtis fight than any other fight on the card, as I'm sure many of you are as well, perhaps. Or I don't even know if many of you might even know this card's going on. It's kind of getting overshadowed by UFC 11 or 311, like many of the fight night cards. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and talk about this fight because I think this is going to be the most significant fight, especially considering the fact that Chris Curtis is actually open. And this is if you're a sports better or MMA better. Mind you, this is not financial advice. This is merely just my opinion, and for entertainment purposes, I feel that is necessary to mention. But I did notice that Chris Curtis is actually opening up at a plus 220, I believe. So the fact that he's opening up at a 220, I think for the sports bettors and MMA bettors is an absolute steal in terms of value. Absolute steal in terms of value. Chris Curtis has an absolute treasure trove in this regard for with experience. I believe he has. Let's see. He has 42 fights. This will be his 43rd fight. He's 37 years old. I believe he's actually on. He might have lost his last fight, but I believe he won two before that. And Roman Kopylov, I believe, won his last fight and lost the fight before that against. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank as to who he lost to. I think it was Brendan Allen, or I think that's who Chris Curtis lost to. Is Brendan Allen. I don't know. Nonetheless, I do got Chris Curtis winning this fight. I don't think Roman Kopylov has. Yes, he does have finishes. Yes, he has finished before, but his last couple of fights, I think his last fight particularly, he just didn't look that impressive to me. He really didn't look that impressive to me. And I believe his last fight was versus a gentleman, a Brazilian guy named Almeida. And he didn't have very many fights, and he actually went to a 3-round decision against him. So, with that being said, I think that is advantageous for Chris Curtis, who has, you know, over half as many fights as Roman. I mean, this guy, I mean, he literally has almost 20 more fights than this guy, I believe. So, pretty insane amount of experience that Chris Curtis has. I think, too, Chris Curtis actually has a reach advantage. It is a very small reach advantage, only half an inch. It is still there, and when you consider Chris Curtis's boxing, I mean, he's got some of the best boxing probably in the middleweight division, if I'm being honest. His boxing is so clean, especially in the pocket. When he's in there in the pocket, just slanging and banging, man, he's a beast. So I really do think at plus 220, if you consider Chris Curtis's experience, you got to go with him on this UFC Fight Night. I think he's going to be the underdog of the night, maybe the underdog of the month, really, if you consider the entire month of January. So I don't know though. I think Marab's going to get that dub on UFC 11. So you never know. If you want to go check that video out, I uploaded that video talking a little bit about the UFC 311 predictions. But I'm going to be making a few more videos on that throughout the week and next week. So make sure to stay tuned for those. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Chris Curtis can get the job done? Like I said, he doesn't seem to be slowing down. Yeah, he's getting up there in age, 37 years old. But for some of these guys, 37, 38, 39, even 40s, in the early 40s, sometimes it seems like that can actually be a peak age for some of these guys. So I don't know. You got to look at people like Glover Teixeira, who won a championship, I think, at 42 years old. And he fights at a heavier weight division as well. I think at light heavyweight. A lot of the times, the heavier you go, the more damage they ensue. So I think Chris Curtis could potentially, if he racks up a few wins, say he knocks Roman Kopylov out, which I think is very possible. I think Chris Curtis we could get a surprise knockout for this UFC Fight Night. I think he could have the potential to make a huge name for himself on this fight night. Yes, he's not the main card. I don't even think he's the co-main event, but he has the potential to make a spotlight for himself on the card. And if he can build up a 3-4 fight win streak within this year and maybe the beginning of next year, maybe he has a little run for a title shot. Imagine him at 40 years old or so, or even 39, 40 years old. I don't know how close he is to 38. Imagine if he could make a sweet little title run for the title shot. I think it'd be cool for his gym. I think he's still with that gym, if I'm not mistaken, Extreme Couture, the same gym that Sean Strickland fights at. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he's at that same gym still. So it's a world class gym. It'd be cool to see another guy come from there, and I think Chris Curtis deserves it, man. If he can rack up a few impressive wins, like I said, especially 2 or 3 knockouts, that would be pretty cool. The first thing that always comes to mind with Chris Curtis is his knockout on Joaquin Buckley. If you haven't seen that fight, highly recommend to go watch Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. That is my recommendation for this video, if anything. But, yeah, I think Chris Curtis at middleweight, he's easily a consistently ranked middleweight. I think in the top 10, you could always put Chris Curtis against pretty much anybody in the top 10, and he's gonna contend. You know what I mean? He's going to contend. He's gonna put up a great fight. Yeah, he is kind of linear. His fighting style is kind of linear. It's very boxing heavy, very boxing dominant. But he has good takedown defense. His grappling is definitely there. It's not the worst in the world, like anybody in the UFC, but it's definitely not. Let's just say if he were to fight Hamzat, I don't think it'd go the greatest, and I think that's true for a lot of people. I think even if maybe we see Chris Curtis against someone like Bo Nickel, which I think is very, very possible. If Chris Curtis racks up, say, another 2 wins or so, and the same goes for Bo Nickel, if they're kind of winning on the same schedule, I think we could potentially see Chris Curtis and Bo Nickel fight later on. But I don't know with 100% certainty. I'm not even sure if Chris Curtis is actually ranked right. I think Chris Curtis is ranked right now. I'm not 100% sure. I should know. Same goes for Roman Kopylov. I don't actually believe Roman Kopylov is ranked. This might be his his gateway to ranking, if you know what I mean. Chris Curtis seems to be kind of a gatekeeper for the middleweight division. Most people go through Chris Curtis, or a lot of contenders go through Chris Curtis. The most recent one, like I said, that comes to mind is Joaquin Buckley. And of course, Chris Curtis is Sean Strickland's main sparring partner, one of his main sparring partners, at least I think he still is. I'm pretty sure these guys are like best friends. That also adds to the effect of Chris Curtis, perhaps with Sean Strickland becoming a champion and that gym getting a lot of eyes and recognition. Perhaps that has motivated Chris Curtis in a way, and I'm all for it. I love Chris Curtis. He's actually from my state, from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'm always rooting for Chris Curtis. I like his personality. I think he's a cool fighter. I enjoy watching his fights. I like his style. I'm always a big fan of the boxers in the UFC, the boxing style. And to be honest, I think he's more exciting than Sean Strickland in a lot of cases, especially because he actually knocks people out. So I got Chris Curtis by knockout this fight, January 11th, this UFC Fight Night fight. Let me know what you guys have, who you guys got winning on this fight. I'm probably going to cover some of the other fights on this card, but I just wanted to cover this fight in particular because it's the one I'm most excited for. So let's go, Chris Curtis. I'm all for the comeback, baby. 2-3 wins, maybe for a title shot, contention shot, who knows. But until next time, guys, I love you. And you have a good rest of your day or night, whatever time it is. Peace.